If you're a true American patriot who believes in the unseen men and women defending this nation, hit subscribe. The story is for you. The room was windowless, temperature set to 58 degrees to keep analysts awake. A satellite map of Afghanistan glowed on the wall. 10 red markers blinked across the Tora Bora region. Ryan Maddox stood behind the director's chair silent, holding a single dossier stamped UBL, active track. He had spent 7 years in field assignments across North Africa and the Balkans. Now Langley wanted him on the most elusive target on record, Osama bin Laden. The orders were concise. Locate, verify, prepare strike feasibility. No speeches, no applause, just signatures and silence. Maddox moved fast. Within 48 hours, he was embedded at the CIA's Islamabad station under diplomatic cover. His first directive: rebuild the human chain that had collapsed after multiple source terminations. Safe houses in Peshawar and Quetta were reopened using black-budget logistics routed through Turkish freight manifests. New cutouts were assigned: Pakistani truckers, tribal fixers, a disillusioned doctor with border zone clearance. Every communication went through one-time pads burned nightly. The first months yielded nothing but dead frequencies. Bin Laden's network had dissolved into a maze of couriers and shell organizations. Maddox installed a covert data relay inside a UNICEF satellite link at Spin Boldak. The feed offered intermittent bursts of encrypted radio from caves south of Jalabad. Pattern analysis indicated movement of al-Qaeda leadership within a 30-mile radius, but Langley needed visual confirmation. Maddox authorized Operation Vigil Dust. 2 CIA assets posing as aid workers crossed the border with GPS-tagged medical crates. Their transmissions confirmed heat signatures consistent with fortified dwellings. Before exfiltration, one agent was captured. The other burned the equipment and vanished into local custody. Maddox signed the casualty report himself. Zero emotion, zero hesitation, field loss accepted. September 11th changed everything. Within hours of the attacks, Langley ordered total mobilization. Maddox was redirected to Task Force Dagger under SOCOM liaison. Drone feeds, intercepted sat phones, and human intercepts flooded the servers. He worked 20-hour rotations parsing audio in Pashto and Arabic, building a correlation matrix of voices that might belong to the Sheikh. By December 2001, NSA triangulations confirmed bin Laden's presence in Tora Bora. Maddox coordinated ground intel with Delta operators on site. He issued precise grid references, updating every 4 minutes. The assault teams advanced through caves under heavy fire. Then communications dropped. The mountains swallowed the signal, and with it, the world's most wanted man. The next morning, Maddox wrote a 6-page after-action memo. Target likely escaped east via unmonitored goat trail. Probability of local facilitation: high. The line would follow him for years. Back at Langley, the room temperature never changed. The same map, same blinking lights, except now a black marker crossed Tora Bora. Maddox received a new envelope, thicker, heavier. Inside, authorization to lead an independent cell under the CTC's Special Activities Division. Mission scope: global manhunt continuation, indefinite duration. He accepted without question. There was no ceremony, only a handwritten note clipped to the file. Some wars never end. Find him first. Maddox filed it under his watch strap and left for cost. Outside, Washington snow turned the parking lot into a field of white silence. Inside his briefcase sat a single photograph: bin Laden entering a mud-brick compound dated 1998. No emotions attached, only coordinates to confirm. Ryan Maddox operated under the cover designation Logistics Officer, U.S. Embassy Doha, but his true command post was a converted hangar outside Kost Airfield. Inside, 20 monitors streamed live intercepts from Predator feeds and SIGINT sweeps across the Afghan-Pakistani border. The agency called it Echo Bay Cell. Maddox called it the waiting room. Bin Laden had vanished, but movement patterns still surfaced. Couriers switching SIM cards every 12 hours. Coded prayers transmitted over low-bandwidth HF. Each trace collapsed before confirmation. Maddox began to suspect the network had splintered deliberately, feeding false traffic to exhaust U.S. resources. By late 2002, he authorized Project Sandglass, an operation to rebuild the courier chain by mapping familial ties, tribal alliances, and financial flows. CIA forensics linked one money transfer from Karachi to a textile front in Dubai. A Kuwaiti national, Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri, surfaced in the dataset. Weeks later, al-Nashiri was captured in UAE, confirming the cell's validity. Under interrogation, he disclosed a single line. "The Sheikh does not speak on air." That phrase reset the search. Maddox concluded bin Laden relied exclusively on couriers, men who memorized messages, never carry devices. The hunt shifted from satellites to footpaths. He brought in a team of 8 field officers fluent in Pashto, Dari, and Urdu. They operated under NDS oversight but reported only to Maddox. For 6 months, they traced logistics convoys across Waziristan, tagging fuel routes, safe houses, and trusted families. One pattern stood out, a string of wedding processions that seemed to move ammo crates beneath decorative carpets. Operation Silent Veil launched with local intercepts disguised as bride escorts. 2 teams infiltrated. One made it back. The rest vanished north of Shkin. Satellite imagery later showed burn marks and an empty camel pin. No recovery mission was approved. Langley classified the loss as compromised by friendly forces. Maddox knew what that meant. Someone inside leaked the route. He initiated an internal audit of his own team using polygraphs and metadata crosschecks. One junior analyst failed a baseline question about external contact. Maddox didn't report it up the chain. He relocated the officer to a data entry post in Bagram and moved on. The audit file vanished 2 months later from Langley's server without trace. 2003 brought a different war. Resources diverted to Iraq. Budgets cut. Maddox's cell was absorbed into a larger joint task group focused on weapons of mass destruction. The UBL pursuit was officially paused. Unofficially, Maddox continued night operations through a ghost fund channeled via State Department grants. That summer, a human asset in Abbottabad delivered a hand-drawn map of a compound with 3-story walls and restricted entry. No satellite image existed yet. The source demanded $40,000 and a U.S. visa. Maddox authorized the payment but classified the file under code name Mirage. Langley analysts dismissed it as fabrication. Abbottabad is a military town. Still, Maddox kept the map. Weeks later, an encrypted message appeared in the Echo Bay terminal from an unknown Langley address. "You're chasing ghosts, Maddox. Stand down before they chase you." He didn't reply. He printed the message, burned it, and sent his own line through a secure relay to the Counterintelligence Bureau. Possible leak within CTC Supervisory Group. Initiate Shadow Monitor. From that moment, the hunter became the observed. Flight logs were flagged, emails mirrored, and Maddox's expense accounts audited. But the directive was still open. Find bin Laden. He relocated to Amman under new cover as a consultant for energy infrastructure. From there, he could reach Pakistan in 5 hours via chartered cargo. He kept no family, no contact records, no digital trace beyond official CIA channels. The file notes show his daily routine in 2004. Wake at 0500, brief at 0600, field intercepts till 2300, sleep 3 hours. 0 vacation days. By the end of that year, the intel picture was shifting again. A Kuwaiti courier, real name still redacted, surfaced in multiple intercepts linking to an unidentified compound in northern Pakistan. Maddox knew it was the same trail from the Mirage map. He requested a drone tasking window. Langley denied it. So he wrote one sentence in his personal log, later classified secret/no foreign. "If they won't authorize the mission, I'll build my own." Maddox built the operation outside official channels. He called it a ghost network, a chain of trusted agents, contractors, and analysts who worked off-grid from Langley oversight. Some were veterans burned by bureaucracy. Others were foreign operatives whose loyalty was measured only in results. Together they formed a silent architecture that could move faster than any approved task force. Funding came through backdated invoices under an energy development NGO. Communications ran through modified Iridium sat phones using one-time pads and burst transmissions under 30 seconds. No one spoke names. Locations were coded as coordinates minus the decimal point, a system Maddox designed himself after a botched intercept in Kandahar years earlier. The first actionable lead came from a wire intercept in Karachi. A courier known as the Kuwaiti had purchased bulk satellite phone cards with serials matching those used in tribal zones west of Islamabad. Maddox's team tracked him to Peshawar, then to a rural district on the edge of Abbottabad. The route matched the forgotten Mirage map almost exactly. He didn't request permission. He flew to Islamabad on a diplomatic charter, drove north under a humanitarian banner, and embedded 2 surveillance assets in the town's outer ring. Their report was brief: a walled compound with restricted entry, no visible vehicles, and a single satellite dish pointing southeast. Trash burns occurred weekly. Residents never left. The structure was deliberately isolated. Maddox transmitted the data through a secure relay to Langley. Response: insufficient verification. No operational priority. He tried again, this time encrypting the coordinates into a logistics report for an unrelated station chief. 3 days later, the station chief was reassigned to Europe. Message received. He realized the problem wasn't lack of proof. It was politics. After years of failed trails and international embarrassment, no one at the top wanted another false lead. The agency preferred quiet ambiguity to public accountability. But Maddox wasn't built to wait for clearance. He assembled a 2-man observation team using former JSOC contractors. They moved in with high-resolution optics and thermal imagers disguised as surveying gear. Over 2 weeks they logged patterns. One man pacing nightly on the balcony, tall, thin, silent. A figure who never stepped outside the walls. A ghost inside a fortress. Then came interference. One of Maddox's encrypted sat phones stopped responding. Hours later, his VPN route through a German relay went dark. Someone inside Langley had found his unsanctioned feed. The following morning, a diplomatic pouch arrived at the embassy with a single folded memo: cease unauthorized operations immediately. Return to base for debrief. He ignored it. Instead, he contacted an old ally inside JSOC, Major Colin Danner, who had worked black missions during the early Iraq surge. Danner owed him 2 favors. Within 72 hours, Maddox received an unmarked case through diplomatic freight. Inside were micro-UAV prototypes, thermal lenses, and 4 unregistered tracking beacons. The note read, "Use them fast." The UAVs flew over the compound at night, masking signatures beneath local traffic radar. They captured partial imagery of the courtyard and shadow profiles of 3 adult males. Maddox froze the frame, enhanced the outline, and compared it to facial data from 1998. Match probability, 78%. High enough to move, not high enough for command approval. Before he could act, one of his surveillance agents disappeared. The man's safe house in Haripur was empty. Laptop gone. No forced entry. A week later, a USB drive appeared in Maddox's locker at the Amman airbase. It contained a short video, his missing agent, blindfolded, speaking under duress. Behind him, a voice said in Arabic, "Stop looking for the dead." It was a message, not from Al-Qaeda, but from someone closer. Someone who knew his operations, his hardware, and his route network. For the first time in years, Maddox wasn't sure who the enemy was. The message confirmed what Maddox had suspected for months. The breach wasn't foreign. It was inside the system. Someone within the intelligence framework was feeding his coordinates to another hand, and that hand wanted the hunt buried. He ran a simple test. He sent 3 different mission reports up 3 separate encrypted channels, each with minor alterations to location and timing. Within 48 hours, 2 of the supposed secure compounds were hit by unidentified armed groups before his teams arrived. The third site, the real one, stayed quiet. It was proof enough. Langley had a leak. He pulled every digital tether, burned SIM cards, and reverted to analog systems, field notebooks, shortwave radios, dead drops. His team shrank from 8 to 3, all handpicked. They operated without satellite support, without budget, and without trust. Maddox called it black without ink. He began to trace the interference back through classified message traffic. Most originated from a comm node in Bahrain, officially part of the regional SIGINT task group. The timestamps coincided with his mission uploads. Whoever it was had Tier 1 clearance and the authority to override encryption keys. That meant a senior officer. He rerouted to Bahrain under cover of a logistics audit. For 3 days, he walked the corridors of the Joint Operations Center like a ghost. Badge clipped, no file open. He studied who accessed the secured server room, who logged after hours, who avoided his eye. On the fourth night, he found a pattern. One technician who re-authenticated using legacy CTC credentials that hadn't existed since 2002. Maddox tailed him off base to a civilian apartment complex. Inside the unit, cables ran to an unregistered relay terminal connected to a private satellite uplink. The technician was transmitting field intel directly to an encrypted endpoint trace to Eastern Europe. Maddox confronted him in silence. No weapon drawn. Just the truth laid bare on a printed datasheet. The man's face drained of color. He admitted nothing, but his hands shook when Maddox mentioned the Echo Bay cell. He said only one sentence before trying to run. "You think Langley still owns this war?" The bullet that dropped him wasn't fired by Maddox. A black SUV rolled up the street seconds later, tinted windows, no plates. The shooters retrieved the body, wiped the apartment clean, and vanished. It was professional work. Not terrorists, not freelancers. Maddox understood the message, stop digging. He returned to Amman and sent a single encrypted line to a secure military relay. Confirmed internal compromise. Continuing alone. From that point, he was off the books entirely. His passport remained active, his cover intact, but every channel he'd used before was either closed or monitored. He became his own asset. Weeks later, an intercepted courier conversation mentioned the Tall One again, this time in the context of a safe Emir under military protection. The phrase safe Emir had appeared only once before, in a 2001 debrief Maddox himself had written after Tora Bora. He realized then that the trail had come full circle. Bin Laden had survived, and the people now trying to silence him were the same who had once funded the first operations. He returned to Pakistan in mid-2005, under a false passport routed through diplomatic freight. The compound in Abbottabad was still there, slightly expanded. The pattern of silence unchanged. He positioned a new sensor array 2 kilometers away, embedded inside a telecom junction box. The signal confirmed a live network, 3 encrypted channels, voice data masked through analog modulation. One belonged to the courier, another to an unknown external contact. The third remained idle, as if waiting. Maddox stared at the spectral graph on the laptop screen, the faint hum of the encrypted carrier signal. After 10 years of searching, he wasn't hunting one target anymore. He was watching 2 worlds talk, and one of them was supposed to be his own. By 2006, Maddox's life had narrowed to a single routine: surveillance, data analysis, and operational silence. He rented a 1-room flat on the edge of Haripur, blending with foreign contractors. No communications, no visitors, no paper trail. The compound in Abbottabad was his only horizon. The drone program was growing fast, but bureaucracy strangled authorization. Maddox operated with what he could control: micro-UAVs and local human assets. Every night, he observed from a safe distance, logging heat signatures and entry points. He learned that the compound had no visible security, no satellite uplink, and no phone lines. It relied on human couriers, old-fashioned and deliberate. He tracked one courier over 6 months, a man with a routine too cautious to be random. The courier used 3 vehicles across 5 districts and changed routes weekly. Every pickup occurred near military installations. Maddox suspected protection, either through infiltration or silent agreement. When he sent the data to Langley through a backdoor channel, he received a neutral response. Assessment noted. No further tasking required. He understood the phrase. It was Langley's polite way of saying drop it. Instead, he doubled down. Using borrowed JSOC optics, he began detailed pattern mapping. Every entrance, every light cycle, every person visible on rooftops. The compound behaved like a sealed ecosystem. Groceries arrived weekly. No trash left the site. Burn nights continued, precise, methodical. One evening, a power fluctuation exposed a figure standing at a second-floor window. Maddox froze the feed, enhanced it, and compared it to his old facial reference. The profile was identical. Probability, 96%. He waited 3 days before moving the footage through a secure route to a single contact inside Langley, a retired analyst who had once overseen CTC image intelligence. The reply was immediate: "You're not authorized for this operation anymore. Someone else is watching now." That was the confirmation he didn't want. His hunt was now under internal observation. Somewhere, another team was active, maybe parallel, maybe adversarial. He switched base locations, moving north through small towns under different aliases. By then, rumors had started spreading in local circles, Americans paying locals for information, unknown vehicles parked at night near the old military road. Someone had noticed. In March 2007, his courier contact went missing. By May, a field tech from his small network was dead, staged as a robbery. When Maddox inspected the scene, his own name was carved on the underside of a doorframe. It wasn't a message from the enemy. It was a reminder from the people supposed to be on his side. He realized he crossed an invisible line between serving the agency and threatening its own secret. Still, he refused to quit. His purpose had detached from command approval. It existed now as a matter of national principle. He would finish what began before bureaucrats traded conviction for protocol. By early 2008, through a foreign defense contractor, Maddox obtained classified bandwidth from a NATO communication satellite. Using it, he built a continuous feed on the Abbottabad compound, the first persistent surveillance of the site. Data packets were routed through Sweden, then relayed back to a private terminal in Arlington under a civilian shell. Each frame, each heat bloom, each courier movement went into the archive. He no longer sent reports, he built a case. In December 2009, a CIA drone strike killed a Jordanian double agent in Khost, taking 7 officers with him. The internal panic that followed shifted priorities back to bin Laden's courier network. Maddox's archive suddenly matched the courier pattern they'd rediscovered, the same one he'd traced 3 years earlier. Langley reactivated his credentials overnight. The orders came in one line: return to theater. Full authorization. Operation Neptune initiated. After nearly a decade, Maddox was back on record. But the message contained one more line, hidden in the footer metadata. A code only he would recognize. They know what you know. Watch your flank. He closed the laptop, exhaled once, and looked north toward Abbottabad. The lights were still burning inside the walls. The man he'd chased for 10 years was alive. And so were the people who wanted the truth buried. By the start of 2010, the agency's internal gears were moving again. The target compound in Abbottabad, once dismissed, was now under active joint surveillance. Analysts rebranded the file, stripped Maddox's name, and elevated it to a compartmented task force, Operation Neptune. Maddox didn't object. The mission mattered more than the credit. He was brought back into the fold through an unmarked vehicle outside Bagram. No formal debrief, no public chain of command. His handler, a younger officer named Harlan Briggs, greeted him with a sealed envelope and 2 words, "Welcome home." Inside were new credentials, a secure tablet, and a single instruction: monitor, but do not engage. The message was clear. They wanted his expertise, not his initiative. For the next 6 months, Maddox served as a silent observer inside the task force. Every feed, every drone image, every courier intercept came across his terminal. He watched as the agency rebuilt the very map he'd drawn years before. Meetings filled with fresh-faced analysts debated patterns he'd already confirmed. He said nothing. But something felt wrong. Data coming from higher command didn't match what he saw in the raw feed. Coordinates were adjusted, timestamps rewritten. Certain files were missing from the record. When he flagged it, the response was clinical, data redacted for compartmental security. He understood. It wasn't about intelligence anymore. It was about narrative control. In February 2011, the White House ordered a final review. The compound was verified, the target confirmed. Operation Neptune Spear was approved. A SEAL team would execute the strike. Maddox wasn't on the manifest. Officially, he had no operational role. But unofficially, Briggs handed him a burner phone with a live link to the mission net. "If something doesn't match protocol," Briggs said, "you'll hear it first." He didn't ask why. On the night of May 1st, Maddox sat alone in a secure room at Langley, a single monitor glowing. The feed was encrypted and timed to the team's helmet cams. At 0:30 local time, the first helicopter breached the compound wall. Static. Then the sound of gunfire, short, controlled bursts. Voices calling out call signs, confirming targets. Within minutes, the phrase came through the net, Geronimo EKA. Enemy killed in action. The room erupted with quiet relief. Maddox didn't move. He watched the feed loop, saw the thermal outline on the floor, and the bagging procedure. Then the camera cut. 2 hours later, He received a secure text from Briggs. All files classified. No external copy. By morning, the official story was written. Maddox read the internal brief. Bin Laden killed in Abbottabad, Pakistan. The operation led by SEAL Team 6. Intelligence credited to cross-agency analysis. His ghost network, his field intercepts, his 10 years of work erased. But something else caught his attention. The listed recovery data mentioned a second encrypted drive found inside the compound. It was labeled Asset 14, classified beyond presidential clearance. No mention of contents, no follow-up record. That night, he accessed a mirror of the operations data cache through a backdoor he'd built years earlier. One file stood out, a transmission from 2 weeks before the raid, originating inside Pakistan using Langley-grade encryption. The sender's ID matched a now-retired senior officer, once assigned to Maddox's old division, the same one who'd warned him to stand down years before. The message was short: secure the package. Delete the rest. Maddox stared at the line for several minutes, then disconnected. He realized what the operation had truly uncovered wasn't just the world's most wanted man. It was proof that someone inside had been negotiating with the same networks they were supposed to destroy. He printed nothing, saved nothing. Just memorized the code sequence and burned the drive. The agency would call him paranoid. They always did. But Ryan Maddox knew this mission had ended in success for the country and silence for the truth. In the weeks following the Abbottabad raid, Langley was electric. Screens filled with broadcast loops, analysts drafted statements, politicians rehearsed victory lines. The agency called it the most successful operation in modern intelligence history. But for Ryan Maddox, it was unfinished business. He sat through debriefs that never asked the right questions, not about the missing files, not about Asset 14, not about why the kill feed had been interrupted mid-exfil. Every report was clean, too clean. A perfect narrative written by people who had never seen a dust storm in Cost or heard the signal noise of a dying transmitter. Maddox was told to stand down for psychological recalibration. They sent him to Reston, Virginia, the quiet exile for agents who'd outlived their missions. A furnished apartment, medical checkups, new badge, no field work. Just paper evaluations. He didn't argue. He watched. He listened. He logged the pattern. Within 2 months, 4 officers from the Operation Neptune planning circle had either transferred or disappeared from the directory. Their files were sealed. Briggs, his handler, was among them. One night, a courier envelope appeared under Maddox's door. No sender, no seal, just his name typed in courier font. Inside was a single flash drive and a note. If you ever wondered why they let you live, open it once. Then forget it. He opened it. The contents were fragments, snippets of intercepted emails, encrypted payment logs, and an unredacted version of the Asset 14 file. It detailed a years-long back channel between an unnamed U.S. liaison and regional power brokers tied to al-Qaeda affiliates. The objective wasn't negotiation. It was control. The agency hadn't just been hunting bin Laden. It had been managing leverage, keeping enemies close enough to manipulate regional outcomes. Bin Laden had become a variable. Not just a threat, but an asset too volatile to remain alive once the calculus changed. The mission's timing, Maddox realized, was political, not strategic. He copied nothing. The drive self-wiped minutes later. But he'd seen enough. He understood now why his operations had been shadowed, why his agents vanished, why the Bahraini technician died. The agency hadn't feared him finding bin Laden. They feared him finding them. Maddox left Reston under the pretext of medical leave and vanished into private transit routes he designed for burned operatives. He surfaced in Warsaw 6 weeks later, carrying nothing but an untraceable phone and a paper copy of his own resignation letter, and signed unfiled, unofficial. From there, he rebuilt his network quietly. Former operators, journalists who'd once been field contacts, satellite analysts working under civilian contracts. He didn't leak classified information, that was treason. But he traced the flow of money, influence, and coordination that had reshaped counterterrorism into a global chessboard. Each line pointed back to the same hub, an interagency program buried under humanitarian funding and post-conflict stabilization budgets. It controlled drone authorizations, NGO logistics, and covert financial transfers. It wasn't just CIA. It was multinational, post-legal, autonomous. the kind of structure that didn't dissolve when wars ended. He called it the continuum. Maddox knew exposing it would mean his own erasure. But he also knew silence was complicity. The difference between loyalty and obedience was the line most agents never saw until it was too late. He began documenting everything: code names, contractors, dates, cross-agency directives. He stored it on analog microfilm, sealed inside an ammunition canister buried in neutral territory. No one else knew the coordinates. The last surveillance footage of him in official archives showed him crossing a street in Prague, carrying a folded newspaper and wearing civilian clothes. No record after that. Langley lists him as retired. Location unknown. The truth is simpler. He never retired, and his location was wherever the next classified lie started. The transmission was sent at 0200 hours from an encrypted satellite band no longer registered to the agency. It lasted 21 seconds, a narrowband pulse aimed at a decommissioned server once used by the Counterterrorism Center. The metadata matched Ryan Maddox's encryption signature, thought to be offline for years. The message contained no words, just one image: an American flag folded in the traditional triangle, resting on a classified dossier marked The Continuum. The file header read for those still watching. By then, Maddox had become a ghost even within intelligence circles. Unconfirmed sightings placed him in Djibouti, then Greece, then somewhere near the Baltic coast. None verified. Every image was blurred, every trace inconclusive. But the operations he had exposed were quietly dismantled one by one. Funding cut, cover programs merged or dissolved. Someone, somewhere, was still acting on his data. In 2014, an internal memo circulated through Langley's gray channels: unverified breach of historic counterterrorism assets. Source designation M1176. No follow-up report was filed. Officially, Ryan Maddox did not exist. Unofficially, he was still on the grid. He worked alone, using the same principles that had defined his life: patience, precision, and silence. He intercepted chatter between private contractors and foreign ministries, tracking a pattern identical to the one that had led him to bin Laden years before. Encrypted messages routed through humanitarian agencies, ghost funds disguised as reconstruction aid. The targets were different now, but the architecture was identical. The continuum wasn't dead. It had evolved. One evening, on a coastal hill overlooking an abandoned relay tower, Maddox made his last known call. The recipient was never identified. The conversation lasted 42 seconds, recorded by a civilian ham operator monitoring the same frequency. His words were clear, steady, and final. The mission doesn't end when the target's gone. It ends when the system that built him is exposed. I've done my part. Tell them to keep watching the shadows. They're moving again. Then silence. No transmission followed. No reappearance. The hilltop site later showed traces of a small campfire, a discarded encrypted handset, and boot prints leading toward the shoreline. For years, the agency debated whether to classify the Maddox file as closed or indefinite. It remained open. Every few months, a low-band signal would ping one of Langley's abandoned listening posts. 3 blips, always at dawn, always the same coordinates. Analysts argued it was atmospheric interference. Others weren't so sure. Inside the sealed archive of the Counterterrorism Center, his original case file remains locked. The final note in the margin, written by an unknown officer, reads simply: he never broke protocol. He just stopped reporting. To this day, fragments of Maddox's shadow network still surface: coded financial trails, unregistered sat links, silent observers who claim no agency but share one principle: protect the Republic, no matter who it threatens. The story of Ryan Maddox isn't about one man or one mission. It's the story of the unseen line between loyalty and control, and the operatives who choose duty over survival. If this story made you proud to stand for something bigger than yourself, leave a like and comment where you're watching from. Real heroes don't wear capes, they carry classified clearance. And when the flag is folded, they keep their oath, even in silence.